Okay, so hey guys, and welcome back to another Sport This Week video. And in today's video I've got baseball, tennis, basketball, rugby, ice hockey, NFL, football, Moto GP, boxing and UFC and news. If you are new around here and you haven't subscribed, please do so. Like the video if you do need like the video, and let's get straight into it. So, gonna start off with the basketball news this week. And so Lakers won 121 to 110 versus Nuggets. Heat won 116 to 109 versus Warriors. Heat won 110 to 107 versus Kings. Celtics won 114 to 113 versus Cavaliers. Lakers won 120 to 117 versus Pelicans. Warriors lost 130 to 129 versus Magic. Heat lost 101 to 99 versus Pacers. Celtics won 123 to 119 versus Bulls. Warriors lost 114 to 105 versus Pelicans. Lakers lost 130 to 116 versus Jazz. Celtics won 113 to 118 versus Knicks, and Lakers lost 114 to 100 versus Cavaliers. And yes, that is all the basketball news. Moving on to the tennis news now, where it was the WTA Finals Fort Worth, where Sakari won 2-0 versus Pegula. Jabeur lost 2-1 versus Sabalenka. It was also the Paris Masters, where Djokovic won 2-0 versus Cressy. Swiatek won 2-0 versus Kasatkina. Tsitsipas won 2-0 versus Evans. Medvedev lost 2-1 versus De Minaur. Alcaraz won 2-0 versus Nishioka. Nadal lost 2-1 versus Paul. Jabeur won 2-1 versus versus Pegula. Sakari won 2-0 versus Sabalenka. Alcaraz won 2-0 versus Dimitrov. Djokovic won 2-0 versus Kachanov. Tsitsipas won 2-0 versus Mutet. Swiatek won 2-0 versus Garcia. Alcaraz lost via retirement versus Rune. Djokovic won 2-0 versus Musetti. Tsitsipas won 2-0 versus Paul. Jabeur lost 2-0 versus Sakari. Djokovic won 2-1 versus Tsitsipas. Swiatek won 2-0 versus Goff. Djokovic lost 2-1 versus Rune to win the men's singles Paris Masters, and Sakari lost 2-0 versus Garcia. And yes, that is all the tennis news. Moving on to the baseball news, Astros lost 7-0 versus Phillies. Astros won 5-0 versus Phillies. Astros won 3-2 versus Phillies, and Astros won 4-1 versus Phillies, meaning that Astros are the World Series champions. So a big congratulations to them. A 4-2 victory in the end for them, which was relatively dominant. And so fair enough, and congratulations to them. And moving on to the rugby news now. Italy won 49-17 versus Samoa. Scotland won 28-12 versus Fiji. England won 46-6 versus Papua New Guinea. New Zealand won 53-23 versus Wales. Ireland won 19-16 versus South Africa. France won 30-29 versus Australia. Argentina won 30-29 versus England. And that is all the rugby news. Moving on to the ice hockey news now. Maple Leafs won 4-3 versus Ducks. Red Wings lost 8-0 versus Sabres. Bruins won 6-5 versus Penguins. Canadians lost 4-1 versus Wild. Maple Leafs won 5-2 versus Flyers. Red Wings won 3-1 versus Capitals. Bruins won 5-2 versus Rangers. Canadians lost 3-2 versus Jets. Red Wings won 3-0 versus Islanders. Maple Leafs won 2-1 versus Bruins. Canadians lost 6-4 versus Golden Knights. Red Wings won 3-2 versus Rangers, and Maple Leafs won 3-1 versus Hurricanes. And yes, that is all the ice hockey news. Moving on to the NFL news now. Packers lost 27-17 versus Bills. Ravens are trading for Smith. Vikings are trading for Hockenson. Bears are trading for Claypast. Bills are trading for Hines. Dolphins are trading for Wilson. Dolphins are trading for Chubb. Steelers are trading for Jackson 3rd. And then it was the trade deadline. And then Thomas has been put on the injury reserve. Bateman out for the season. Djokovic extending Chubb. Patriots won 26-3 versus Colts. Packers lost 15-9 versus Lions. Dolphins won 35-32 versus Bears, and Buccaneers won 16-13 versus Rams. And yes, that is all the NFL news. Moving on to cricket news now. Australia won won by 42 runs versus Ireland. England won by 20 runs versus Australia. Netherlands won by 5 wickets versus Zimbabwe. India won by 5 wickets versus Bangladesh. Pakistan won by 33 runs versus South Africa. New Zealand won by 35 runs versus Ireland. Australia won by 4 runs versus Afghanistan. England won by 4 wickets versus Sri Lanka. Pakistan won by 5 wickets versus Bangladesh. And India won by 71 runs versus Zimbabwe. And yes, that is all the cricket news. Moving on to the football news now. Powell has stepped down as Brighton coach. Roma won 3-1 versus Verona. Leverkusen drew 0-0 versus Bruges. Porto won 2-1 versus Atletico. Bayern won 2-0 versus Liverpool. versus Inter. Liverpool won 2-0 versus Napoli. Spurs won 2-1 versus Marseille. Barcelona won 4-2 versus Plzen. Ajax won 3-1 versus Rangers. Frankfurt won 2-1 versus Sporting. Real Madrid won 5-1 versus Celtic. Leipzig won 4-0 versus Shakhtar. Chelsea won 2-1 versus Dynamo Zagreb. Copenhagen drew 1-1 versus Dortmund. PSG won 2-1 versus Juventus. Benfica won 6-1 versus Haifa. Man City won 3-1 versus Sevilla. Milan won 4-0 versus Salzburg. Rosenoir is the new Hull manager. Piqué has retired. Midtjylland won 2-0 versus Sturm. Feyenoord won 1-0 versus Lazio. Manu won 1-0 versus Sociedad. Sheriff won 1-0 versus Ammonia. Qarabag drew 1-1 versus Freiburg. Nantes won 2-0 versus Olympiacos. Trabzonspor won 1-0 versus Ferencvaros. Monaco won 4-1 versus Cervena Zvezda. Arsenal won 1-0 versus Zurich. PSV won 2-1 versus Bodo Glimt. Fenerbahce won 2-0 versus Kiev. Rennes drew 1-1 versus Larnaca. Roma won 3-1 versus Ludogorets. Union Berlin won 1-0 versus Union SG. Braga won 2-1 versus Malmo. Fiorentina won 3-0 versus RFS. Başakşehir won 3-1 versus Hearts. Slavia Prague drew 1-1 versus Sivasspor. CFR Cluj won 1-0 versus Balakani. Djurgården won 1-0 versus Shamrock. Ghent won 4-0 versus Molde. Slovan Bratislava won 2-1 versus Zalgiris. Basel won 2-0 versus Pionik. Apollon won 1-0 versus Vaduz. AZ drew 1-1 versus Dnipro 1. Lech won 3-0 versus Villarreal. Beersheva won 4-0 versus VN. West Ham won 3-0 versus FCSB. Anderlecht won 2-0 versus Silkeborg. Partizan drew 1-1 versus Slovako. Köln drew 2-2 versus Nice. Lopetegui is the new Wolves manager. Leeds won 4-3 versus Bournemouth. Man City won 2-0 versus Fulham. Forest drew 2-2 versus Brentford. Brighton won 3-2 versus Wolves. Napoli won 2-0 versus Atalanta. Bayern won 3-2 versus Hertha. Leicester won 2-0 versus Everton. Milan won 2-0 versus Spezia. Liverpool won 2-1 versus Spurs. Palace won 2-1 versus West Ham. Newcastle won 4-1 versus Southampton. Villa won 3-1 versus Man U. Leverkusen won 5-0 versus Union Berlin. Lazio won 1-0 versus Roma. Sociedad drew 1-1 versus Valencia. Juventus won 2-0 versus Inter. Chelsea won 3-1 versus Man U. Marseille won 1-0 versus Lyon. And Betis drew 1-1 versus Sevilla. And just that is all the football news. Moving on to the boxing news now. Gonzalez won via unanimous decision versus Iwata to remain WBO World Light Flyweight Champion, which I didn't predict right. Yoshino won via KO in round 6 versus Nakatani to remain WBO Asia Pacific Lightweight Champion. Taraji won via TKO in round 7 versus Kyoguchi to become WBA Super and WBC World Light Flyweight Champion, which I didn't predict right as well. But a great fight from what I saw for that fight. Shiraz will fight Wilson Bent on the 26th of November. One of my fighters which we've had on the channel is having a big fight versus Shiraz, which is something I'm very much looking forward to. Al-Bushi won via unanimous decision versus Lawrence Adornio. Hatton won via TK in round 1 versus Bartos. Fiaz won via unanimous decision versus Voltiera. Very proud of Fiaz getting another victory. The first person we ever interviewed on this channel, if you do not already know. Al Nuami won via stoppage in round 7 versus Hack. Yafai won via unanimous decision versus Palklar. Yafai won via unanimous decision versus Garcia to remain WBC International Flyweight Champion. Rakimov won via stoppage versus Barrett to become IBF World Super Featherweight Champion, which I didn't predict right, but was a very good fight. Cameron won via unanimous decision versus McCaskill to become WBC, WBA, WBO, IBF, and IBO and Ring Magazine World Super Lightweight Champion, which I didn't predict right. McCaskill just looked off it. I wasn't sure what was the matter with her. Even from the starting bell, she just looked off it and did not look at her best, and got punished for it and ended up losing, especially the early rounds. Bivol won by unanimous decision versus Ramirez to remain WBA Super World Light Heavyweight Champion, which I did predict right. I believe I got that bang on, I might be wrong. Morel won by KO in round 12 versus Yobosanulli to become WBA World Super Middleweight Champion, which I did predict that Morel would win. Can't remember how by, but I mean, yeah, not a great week for me via predictions. Hutchinson will fight Spadacchini on the 11th of November. McCormack, Dickinson and Clark will fight on the November 26th. And yeah, that is it for the boxing news. Moving on to the UFC news now. Craig will fight Walker on the 21st of January. Magny won via submission in round 3 versus Rodriguez, and Lemos won via KO in round 3 versus Rodriguez. And yes, that is it for the UFC news. Moving on to the final sport now, where it's the Moto GP news, where it's the final race of the season, and it was all to play for the championship. And it was the Valencia Grand Prix. Martin was on pole, Marquez started second, and Miller started third. In the end, Rins won, Binder came second, and Martin came third, with Miller, Zarco, Vinales, Marquez, Espargo, Binder, and Espargo not finishing. And so, even though Bagnaia came ninth, Bagnaia is the MotoGP champion because of all the not finishing and just a crazy race. Bagnaia ended up being the champion, so big congratulations to him. I believe that's his first title. I might be wrong, but I believe it is. But yeah, that is it for today's video. Hope you did enjoy. Like the video. If you didn't, like the video, subscribe if you're new, and thanks for watching.